Hi, welcome to Governance Bites. I'm Mark Banicevich, and today I get to spend time with David Boyle.
Hey Mark, how are you?
Great to have you, David.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come on your YouTuber.
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah, I'll be famous and retire one day, right? Just become a YouTuber.
You'll be trending very shortly, I'm sure.
So David's a very experienced executive, having had time as an executive at ANZ Bank, New Zealand's largest bank, also at the Retirement Commission, which at the time was the Commission for Financial Capability, and now at Mint Asset Management, which has a significant number of sum of money under.
Yeah, we've got around 1.6 billion, and majority wholesale and clients as well as advice-driven business. So from a funds perspective, it's
it's a good sum.
Yeah, it's a good gig.
Working with.
Yeah.
And David's very passionate both around financial literacy and also around music. And I think he's probably been to more live gigs than anybody I know. In fact, probably lots of sound engineers. He's probably seen more live gigs than sound engineers. And so his journey into governance was through charities and things that are involved in music, and has since been on for-profit boards as well. So getting a good core of governance experience.
Yeah, well, I started to. I mean, I was in a couple of NGOs, one NGO and a charitable organisation called Play It Strange. So. I think it's important to follow your passions around some of the interests that you have, but also where you think your specific skill set could be useful.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Cool. So the topic we wanted to talk about a little bit was risk. So for a board of directors, what is risk?
It's pretty consistent, irrespective of where or what board you're on. I guess you've got to ensure you're maintaining some fiduciary duty. That is, ensuring that you're looking after your clients, your stakeholders, the organisation, and obviously being, pretty much what's on the tin is inside it as well. So a fair representation. There's a lot of, depending on the board that you're on, there can be some financial liabilities, legal liabilities, I guess risks within the business as well. So really understanding those elements are incredibly important when you're on a board, and then how you can kind of mitigate those.
Right, okay. So with your experience in not-for-profits, what are the key risks for not-for-profit boards?
Yeah, look, it's a little bit different to, say, a listed company board or even a financial services entity, because one of the biggest things is actually delivering your services, but from a purpose of where's that income going to come from?
Right.
So with an NGO like Stantamaya, which I chair, we get funding from government agencies and the services that we provide to tamariki around New Zealand. So, there's always a question mark around the types of service that you're able to provide, the cost of delivery, and funding has always been something it's never guaranteed. It's not like running in a company where you know what your books and your balance sheet's like and where your income's coming from. And Play It Strange as well. We actually are surviving and providing services based on the goodwill of a number of really great organisations that see us as to support getting, songwriting into schools and then recording it, which is just amazing.
Yeah, that's very cool.
It's so cool. And, the transition of that, particularly with Play It Strange, is around how you're not only supporting students and improving their well-being because they're getting confidence and they're doing something that they've probably never dreamt of, and also seeing it for the family and the wider whānau, if you like, around the impact it is, the positiveness. It's just gold. It's a wonderful thing to be part of.
So, yeah, absolutely. And we talked earlier about how when you're on a not-for-profit board, you tend to be there for your passion, and you are under liability to act in the entity's best interests. And the sorts of risk, you're talking there about financial risk, where a lot of not-for-profits have very limited sources of funds that could be cut off very quickly. So making sure the entity is financially sustainable. You have volunteers. You have risk around your volunteer base or your capacity to do things as well. And then you're often, depending on the nature of your not-for-profit, you've got scant knowledge sometimes of legal liability and so forth. So there's risk around that sort of
thing. Yeah, there And look, this should be fundamental across any board, is that there should be good diversity within a board and a great skill set in different areas. So you can be passionate about a topic, but you're going to need someone with capability around legal and accounting expertise. You're going to need someone that will be hopefully very strong in strategic planning, because my view, a board's role in a lot of cases is managing and ensuring that strategic direction that's been written and focused on is being delivered, and how we can support that. Sometimes the boards can get caught into the weeds of the day-to-day activity of the business. You've got to be really careful with that, because that is a segregation that I see. It's really important. So, getting those things. And, there are a number of different risks that every board will be dealing with, and they'll have a risk register, most likely. You can't, get rid of all risk, but it's how you manage it, you're aware of it, and how you can mitigate it as much as you can around that.
So let's take one step before you look at managing risk. How do you identify it? What processes do you use to identify the risk?
Yeah, look, I've been fortunate for the boards that I've been on. They've either been already established, or they've kind of been reviewed and updated. And risks can be environmental, can be internal, it's key staff.
Yes.
Perhaps the markets, if you're in financial services, what are the risks around income, around insurance, around investment, what are the kind of the headwinds, and also what are the regulatory requirements you've got to be mindful of as well.
Absolutely.
Which I think incredibly important. So you do need that, but then you also got to look at what are the fundamental issues around the entity itself. Has it got a good leadership? Has it got a good strategic direction? And has the board got a clear, focus on what those objectives will look like in the future? And follow them, track and measure. And there will be risks that will come up and down, and levels of volatility as well. So really ensuring that it's something that's reviewed every time the board meets. Checking, are there any elements that may have changed, and seeing what we can do to either improve or mitigate them.
So that's the value of your risk register, right? Being able to pull it out at each board meeting and before the board meeting, have a read through and think, is there anything here that's changed?
Yeah, it should be kind of like a standing agenda as part. And there will be time frames that it's really important to go back to as well. Like there could be specific periods of time around the financial year end that need to be looked at. There might be around staffing, training, all these elements. It's not like a set and forget. You just don't pop it in the drawer. No. You need good visibility, but you also want to make sure you can deliver the support for the CEO or the managing director to deliver the outcomes for the business.
So once you've identified the shopping list, and as you said, the shopping list of risks, there are some that are very generic that you could probably Google and get a good idea for some of the
ChatGPT, I'm sure, will come up with a wonderful big list of everything that you should or could be covering. So there will be those general governance risk aspects, but I think you've got to go a bit broader than that. And I think to help with that, the risk of a board is ensuring that you do have a range of different voices around the table.
Yeah, right.
And that they bring a level of diversity, not just by gender, but by age, by experience, by skill set, and combining them together. I think that's incredibly important, and as more boards evolve and grow in the environment, I think we're going to see more of that occur.
Yeah, we'll come back to risk in a moment, because you've mentioned this concept of diversity a couple of times, and often in the research, diversity is how many male and how many female, and possibly because it's so easy to measure. But really it's diversity of experience, diversity of skill set, diversity of the way you think that's important, isn't it? To bring that
absolutely. I mean, we work very closely with the Kaumātua in the different regions for us in Stantamai, for example. So we have their voice as part of the roundtable board structure. So there's a lot of learning for a lot of New Zealand boards probably and participants to really get a better picture of not just the current environment, but what's our future population going to look like? What are those needs and demands, and what are those products and services you're going to need to provide? And getting that range of different voices is just imperative, I think, for growth, and also I guess making sure you're going to deliver the outcomes that you want to.
Right, absolutely. There is a trend in New Zealand now moving to consider Māori governance in a bigger way, and I've started to look into this, and it's really interesting, and I think it's got a lot of overlap with the Eastern approach to governance, where, as you just implied, you're looking at the next 100 years of the entity, you're looking at intergenerational things rather than just the next 5 years, and I think it's a really important angle to bring.
Absolutely, and look, it will vary relative to the, I guess, the organisation you're talking about, but using Stantamaya as an example, I mean, we look at the current and future generations of young New Zealanders and how we can support the communities to deliver better outcomes for them. And you know, it's no easy task, and there are plenty of voices at the table. The key part is, I guess from my perspective, is ensuring that we're all listening to the voices and then ultimately aligning to, you know, any changes that we need to make so we deliver those outcomes in the right way.
Absolutely. So as you kind of suggested, the diversity of thinking and things comes from the difference in your upbringing and the difference in your experience, which is why gender is often used as one proxy for diversity, but also ethnicity is another key proxy, as well as, you know, you said before, legal, accounting skills and so forth. So the diversity of experience, very, very important. And I guess one of the challenges for you as a chair, as you've just said, is making sure that every voice comes out and everyone is heard, and you take all the best of those ideas together to get the good decisions. Yeah,
I would hope that for any board member that they have the ability and are not afraid to give a voice on a topic. They may not necessarily agree with all the perhaps specific elements, but it's so important to get alignment at some stage and not get to the stage where everyone's going to have a vote, and then maybe the chair has to do an overriding vote. I've never been in that situation, and I hope that I never am, because that means we haven't probably talked through the issues that the board members are wanting to deal to and work with. And some of it can be very emotive.
Yes.
Some of it can have a lot of history as well. And one of the things that are incredibly important is the rotation of boards as well. I think perhaps in the past, there hasn't been a good, structure perhaps from a trustee perspective, saying, to get those fresh ideas and new people coming on board, you do need to rotate, the board members, and there should be tenure times. That everyone wants to help, but I think there comes a time where you do need to bring fresh ideas and thinking, because environments keep changing.
Yeah, another one of the things that we plan to talk about that you've just brought up there is around the concept of succession planning and the importance of it. So, as you say, it's important to get fresh ideas in. So how does a good board, and the culture of the board of listening and talking and so forth is very important, but also having a culture of a board member realising that maybe my time's done now, I'm not adding the value that I was when I joined, and being able to step away. How does a good board manage that succession planning to make sure that there's somebody else to step in?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and there's no right or wrong answer perhaps, but I think the way I've seen boards evolve and kind of look forward around their future planning is you may, and I'm just using this as an example, you might have three terms of 3 years, if that makes sense. So irrespective of whether you're vibrant and amazing and you're bringing a lot to the board, perhaps after 9 years, that's a long time, isn't it? And a truckload can change during that period. So that could be an example. And I think it's also ensuring that you've got people in the wings ready that you're thinking about that will replace a specific area of requirement, whether it is in a legal sense or whether it's from an accounting sense or a environmental sense, someone that knows that particular industry incredibly well, or the regulatory environment. So getting that breadth, but also thinking ahead a little bit around who might be someone future, also for the chair, someone for the next board member, this, and it should be a really good open discussion, and one that sometimes can be difficult for those that have been on a board for a long period of time, but overall, I think it's attractive for that rotation to be effective.
It's also very challenging in the not-for-profit sector as well, right? If you're paying good money to directors, you can attract really good talent, but not-for-profits, quite often it's a volunteer basis, and it can be much harder to attract, particularly independent voices, people that don't know so much about the organisation.
Yeah, totally. I mean, income if you're looking at it as a total profession, then ultimately that skill set is going to be attracted to those larger salaries or larger payments that directors will get, remunerated a lot of based around risk or their capability and expertise. I think there's a lot of New Zealanders that have got those strengths and capabilities, but it's not necessarily the time as well to contribute. So, I mean, I'm sure we've all been on school boards or we've done, at committees or work like that. It's again finding some time, and to get started is just look for perhaps one entity that you think you could bring some skills with, and or a particular section of the NGO market that you might like to follow, and kind of build it up from there.
Yeah, as you suggested before we started filming, you want to have something that, and two other people have actually said it on this as well when they've given advice, is choose something you're passionate about.
Yes.
Choose something you're really, really driven by. Yeah, cool. So now, just stepping back to the conversation we were having about risk, once you've identified this list of risks, you've got your shopping list that you might have got through ChatGPT,
yep.
and then your specific risks to the entity that you'll get from conversations around the table. Once you've identified those risks, what do you do to manage them?
Well, so basically you're going to set some, boundaries or ability of changing or picking up on when they're getting into a common approach is, a green, amber and red, the traffic light system, for example, and has an environmental element change that's going to impact those risks, or has it created a new one. I think reviewing that and having the flexibility to measure that and also see how you can try and mitigate that in the future is really important. So, yeah, I mean, you never can mitigate, as I think mentioned before, total risk. No one will be in business. No one will provide a service, and there are always risks associated with anything that you're involved with. So it's having that awareness, but also making sure that you're comfortable with the risk that you're taking, or else you won't be able to deliver some of the services in the first place. So,
yes.
Or a solution. And the regulatory environment for financial services, for example, gives a pretty good, kind of framework to work within. And if you are able to deliver within that framework, then it's about monitoring and making sure that you're not getting yourself into perhaps a more challenging situation.
Right, which comes down to the board getting good information from management about what's going on.
Yeah, look, the other important element is having a great relationship with the CEO or the managing director from a board perspective, and channeling that, conversation primarily through the chair, I think. And then for the CEO or the managing director to be able to present and his or her team to provide the information to the board that they are looking for to manage those risks, and transparently as well. It's just incredibly important.
And the board will often also have a subcommittee, the audit and risk committee, that will have more of a skill set in this area and help drive that stuff in one of those areas. Right?
Yeah, look, it really depends on the size of the board and where that expertise is required, but absolutely, audit risk requirement could be property, could be a whole range of other elements outside the normal business day-to-day work as well.
And then ultimately you can get to the stage where you can maybe transfer the risk by getting insurance. There'll be some other ways you can mitigate it through good information and so forth. Ultimately you may end up just accepting some of the risks.
Yeah, there is. I mean, 100% actually. There is just going to be some time that you know that risk is there, you've done the best that you can to mitigate it, but it will always possibly, be there, and you've just, be mindful of how you manage it.
Yeah, right. Well, having sat on a few boards now, and of course, before that, having reported to boards as an executive for quite some time, what's the best advice you've been given?
There's been a couple of little wee anecdotes that I've been given over time, and probably I'll split it in two parts. One is when going on a board for the first time, and it was always, I was a little bit nervous about that originally. I thought I knew quite a lot about some of this, and it took me quite a long time to realise that actually I didn't. And getting some third-party support, like joining the Institute of Directors, for example, is a wonderful foundation just to get that knowledge. But also listening, firstly, amongst your peers within the board, and seeing the protocols, the processes, hearing their knowledge and understanding and kind of soaking it up to a point where you can then have some confidence initially to start stretching your legs just a little bit around how you can bring and add value to it as well. And what I realised is you don't know what you don't know until you get asked. So it's surprising when you've had some pretty good life experience, there are things that will help you, support you in some of these directions that you may not have understood or been part of in the past. The other one was, as a chair, not to surround yourself by people like you, and God, that'd be terrible to have people like me around the board table. So, making sure that...
fun, but you wouldn't get a lot done.
100%, yeah, absolutely. It would be a lot of fun, a lot of yap, and probably not necessarily a lot of outcome. So it's a very fair point. But I think, the trick is finding those people that have got that skill set. You don't necessarily, have to have a complete understanding around what everyone's doing, but as a collective whole, bringing that to life is just so powerful. And I think that would be one of the best recommendations I would suggest to anyone when they're building a new board or creating a new board, or as a chair coming in, is think about everything that you don't have a skill set that that's going to be important to the business. Right,
yes, absolutely. So you've probably already answered the next question about what advice you'd give to somebody starting out.
Yeah, look, I think it goes back to those 3 points perhaps that I've dribbled on a little bit too much on in some areas, but the first is, thinking about the skills that you have and how you could transfer those skills to an entity, whether it's an NGO or whether it's a listed company or whether it's a private business. What are the things that you think you could help with them? Mm-hmm. Secondly, and I think ideally it does help if you've got a genuine interest or passion around it. It's not imperative, but I think that brings the best out of your own skill set. And I guess the third part really is, the amount of learning you're able to achieve when you are on a board and understanding. It's just so valuable. And I think, having that as an option as you build up your portfolio, if that is going to be your career change in the time or in the future, making sure that you do get some external third-party support around that and talk to others that are on boards before you make that move.
Right, absolutely. Well, I love a good summary, so that's really a great way to finish it. Thank you, David. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Mark.
Look forward to catching up again too.
Okay, mate. Take care.
See you next episode.
Thanks.